Hello everyone. So today the three of us will be talking about Shadow over Innsmouth, the famous Lovecraft story. And after this, we're thinking of watching The Shape of Water, weren't we?
Yes, to compare the two views.
Yes, I think there'll be a lot of rich ground for comparison because considering how Shape of Water is meant to be a direct parody slash commentary subversion of both The Creature from the Black Lagoon and Shadow over Innsmouth, I think that'll be very interesting. So Shadow over Innsmouth starts with the author slash protagonist talking about how the government forces have wiped out this town, this seaside town of Innsmouth, and no one's quite sure the details of why. Everything's very hush-hush, and no one knows why this town was suddenly ransacked by special forces and government forces, and a submarine even shot a torpedo into the reef just offshore. And some liberal groups complained about it, but they were showing secret information, and they were shortly afterwards like, oh no, it's fine. We're not mad about this random attack on a seaside village. Do you guys have anything you want to say about that?
I suppose it's kind of interesting that the government was so quick to respond.
Yes, that was something which
I said that was the most unrealistic thing about the whole story was the swift and drastic response by the US government.
Yeah, the US government takes prompt, immediate, decisive, and correct action in dealing with the problem.
Yes. Oh, cults worshipping some Lovecraftian thing. Well, let's nuke him from orbit just to make sure.
Yeah, well, nuke him from the ground they do with guns.
Yeah.
But yeah. And there's been a ban on people talking about it, but he's like, I'm going to break the ban. I'm going to tell you the truth. And then we have the first hint of the plot twist at the end where he says, and all this, me talking about all this, will make the decision that I have to make clearer. Yeah, the decision I'm going to have to make. And there's also a slight reference to his mother's family coming from nearby in Arkham. Which is not a very... It doesn't really mean much right now, but it's going to be very important later on with, as I said, with the twist.
It builds suspense and expectation well. You want to find out what could have been so drastic that all these people were raided by the government.
Yeah. And so he's celebrating his coming of age, and so he's going on a tour of New England. This is him describing what happened years ago and how he first came to Innsmouth. And he finds out about Innsmouth talking with a stout, shrewd-faced agent in Arkham, I think.
No, it's not Arkham because they
Right. Oh yeah, in Newburyport. That's right. And the person goes on a very long spiel, which I found a bit weird when I first read it, because the stout, shrewd-faced agent gives him a very long info dump about Innsmouth, which I felt was maybe a little unrealistic to how people actually talk. It reminded me slightly of the whole conceit of the original Dracula novel, where everyone takes copious and detailed notes and journal entries step by step of every single thing. It's a little weird that this stout, shrewd-faced agent gives him this long dump about it. But then that is kind of the horror vibe, sort of Lovecraftian vibe of having the person who goes on a very long talk about some obscure secret thing. It's building suspense.
And we also establish our protagonist's attitude towards the whole mystery surrounding Innsmouth, that he thinks that because he's well educated and sophisticated, he is safer or isn't so easily scared as all these ignorant peasants.
Yes, with all these crazy superstitious rumours about Innsmouth. The protagonist comes across as the quintessential horror movie character who disbelieves it all. It's like nothing supernatural could possibly going on. Everything's going to be fine. It's all just superstition. I'm going to waltz in. Nothing bad's going to happen to me. I'll get out, no worries. and it starts off being kind of normal, but it gets increasingly hard to stomach his lack of self-preservation instinct or wariness as it goes on.
Because even if nothing supernatural was going on, it's being described as a very dangerous town in which multiple people have gone missing.
Yeah.
And he thinks, wow, I really must visit this place all by myself.
I think, though, another thing is, even if there's nothing necessarily supernatural going on, it's pretty obvious that something culty is going on.
Well, it's explicitly said by the stout shrewd agent that
they're
all worshipping some strange cult. It's like, yeah, that's nothing to worry about. It's interesting that the negative stereotype of the small town, that it's close knit, superstitious, inbred, blah blah, all these things. It's interesting that both Innsmouth is like the most extreme, awful example of that case happening, but yet also the like sort of hatred of outsiders and the close knit, oh, we do our own thing here, has like a positive expression in the reaction of everybody else to Innsmouth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because all the local communities go like, we hate Innsmouth.
Yes, and so it's like on the one hand, the Innsmouth is like an example of the most extreme Hollywood anti-small town portrayal, negative stereotypes of small town people you can imagine, but then also the small town people are also portrayed as being correct about Innsmouth when our sophisticated intellectual middle class person is proven totally wrong.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Innsmouth is also mentioned in 2 other stories. The Shadow over... No.
Innsmouth is mentioned in The Shadow over Innsmouth, yes.
I forgot its name.
Well,
the one about the monster that hides in the shed.
The Dunwich Horror?
Yes.
I don't remember it being in the Dunwich Horror, but it could well have been. I haven't read Dunwich Horror in a while.
And also the thing on the doorstep.
Which I haven't read at all. I'll have to do that.
Yeah, so the shrewd ticket office
person,
man establishes that the people from Innsmouth are weird.
And there's a very topical reference. We're recording this on the 18th of February 2020, and the coronavirus is a big deal, and there's a reference. Here's the quote. That was before the big epidemic of 1846, when over half the folks in Innsmouth was carried off. They never did quite figure out what the trouble was, but it was probably some foreign kind of disease brought from China or somewhere by the shipping. And it's like,
diseases from China.
Diseases from China. But sorry, what were you going to say?
There's a lot of speculation about what the source of the weirdness might be, and some people think it's because of foreign people from the Polynesian islands and places like that coming in from the ships.
Yeah.
And I think the ticket office man says, I always thought it was some kind of racial prejudice on the part.
Here's the exact quote. I'll read it out. But the real thing is behind the way folks feel is simply race prejudice. And I don't say I'm blaming those that hold it. I hate those Innsmouth folks myself, and I wouldn't care to go to their town. So it's like, well, it's probably racism. And man, that's legit. That's pretty real.
It reminded me so much of how people talk about homosexuality now. Oh, they're gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, it's like
yes, that they hate them for racial reasons. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, that's fine. I'm not. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm racist myself, so I'm not judging.
I have racist friends.
Yes.
Well, one of my best friends is racist. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
It was very, very funny.
And there's several. Captain Marsh is mentioned several times. He's definitely going to be a prominent figure. Yes. And he's rich, and no one knows how exactly.
And it's revealed that not many people go. Innsmouth is avoided by all the local people.
Yeah.
And some people have had to go there, like the inspector for the gold. The gold factory and government officials all of them who've come back have been very freaked out by it, and some of them have disappeared, which I feel is most important to consider when judging our protagonist's actions for, going forward.
Yeah.
So the author does more investigating, and he goes to a local museum
To
in
see the
town
tiara, yeah.
and sees a otherworldly tiara which is outside any artistic line that he's seen before. It looks alien and freaks him out a little bit.
Yeah. Among these reliefs were fabulous monsters of abhorrent grotesqueness and malignity, half ichthyaic and half Bactrian, and half Batrachian in suggestion, which one could not disassociate from a certain haunting and uncomfortable sense of pseudo-memory, so they called up some image from deep cells and tissues whose retentive functions are wholly primal and awesomely ancestral. Which, as you mentioned, there's a lot of around this time, there's a lot of fascination with the idea of ancestral memory and harking back to what your ancestors experienced.
I think it's very interesting because a lot of the stuff that Lovecraft stories used was new scientific discoveries.
Yes.
Because the Colour Out of Space, I think it was written just after, I think it was infrared was discovered.
Whatever the colours are that human beings can't see with their eyes, it was discovered that there were colours outside of the visible spectrum. It was just around that time when he wrote Colours Out of Space, yeah.
And he also wrote, I forgot what the name is, but I
think about the story about the person being frozen?
No, there was that one, but also the one about the aliens that come from, what's the furthest planet out?
Pluto?
Pluto.
Ah, yes, I do have vague memories of that, yeah.
I forgot what it's called, but...
Yeah, me too.
He also wrote that one after Pluto was discovered.
Yeah, so the general establishing in the first chapter is that although the local people in the surrounding towns and villages don't know what's going on in Innsmouth, they know that something bad is going on, and they're not good Christians, and so they refuse to associate with them or go there.
Yeah.
So they have a
and
they are forming a protective barrier around Innsmouth that stops it from spreading so much into the outside world.
Yeah. And there's a funny line about the tiara. In odd contrast to the tiara's aspect was its brief and prosy history, as related by Miss Tilton. That's a funny line.
Yeah, I really like the idea of this schoolmarmish, sort of plump, middle-aged, very ordinary woman giving him a description of this eldritch horror that she's been storing in the back room.
Yes. Oh, I got it from old Bartlett. He pawned it from someone or other, and he got it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's horror from out of time and space. Yes. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And we get a name for the cult, which is the Esoteric Order of Dagon. And there's an explanation of how it drove out Freemasonry and the local churches from Innsmouth and is now the dominant religion there.
Yeah. Just a slight thing. Have you read the short story called Dagon, Eamon?
Yes, I believe so. It's very short, I think.
Yes, it's very short.
It was one of his first stories, I think.
Is Dagon a fish person?
It's not an old one, I don't think.
I believe. Well, again, the Cthulhu mythos is confusing, but there's like great old ones who are like in the outer realms, and ones who are like deep in Earth, or
I think.
And so Dagon and Cthulhu are like under the sea and like
what's the
monsters.
city called?
Relay?
Yeah, I think Dagon's not. I think Cthulhu's in. What is it?
Relay.
Relay.
Yeah.
But I don't think Dagon is. I think he's something separate.
Is that inside a hollow earth? Is it Relay?
No,
it's under the water in a parallel dimension. It's a bit complicated. I'm not the most well-versed person on the Cthulhu mythos.
Anyway,
I know.
Is there a hollow earth in the Cthulhu mythos?
I think so, but I think this was not, because I know the Hollow Earth story Lovecraft wrote. I don't know if it was the first one, but it was the Rats in the Walls. Was that one?
Yeah. I think we should stop pulling out ignorance on this though, because I don't think I know enough to comment on the itty bitty details about the Cthulhu mythos. But she talks about that, and then we move on to chapter 2, where he's about to go onto the bus, which already seems like a very bad. Even the first step seems like a very bad idea, hard to justify.
And he's given instructions. It's like, whatever you do, don't stay the night.
Yes.
And already there's descriptions of how the bus driver looks horrible in every way. He's got these like bristly blonde hairs, and he's got bulging eyes and weird hands and feet, and he just looks awful.
And he's got odd wrinkles on his neck.
I wonder what those could be.
Yes. And so as soon as you finish the description of the bus driver, and you think, he sounds like a fish man.
I think one of the creepiest things about them, though, is the fact that they don't blink.
Yes.
They just kind of stare at you without blinking.
But there's one of the things about the monsters in this story, which is that, for instance, in Dungeons and Dragons, I've forgotten the exact name of the creatures, but there's...
Isn't it like Kahoo or something?
Kiatoa.
Ah.
Yeah, there's this like little
fish people
that worship a god.
They're
and
don't they have like pulled magic power that just create deities?
Something like that.
They were slaves from the mind flayers, and as all ex-slaves, the mind flayers, they have psionic powers, and that's what generates.
Yeah, but the point I wanted to make about them is that they're kind of silly and not scary at all.
They're more like fish that are slightly humanoid shaped.
Yeah, because
fish kobolds.
Yes, because just a fish person in and of itself is not horrifying at all, really.
I suppose it would be if you saw an actual one in real life.
It would be in real life, but it just doesn't tend to, in literature and in media generally, as characters. Fish people don't tend to inspire horror, and so with how ubiquitous, like, anthropomorphic animal creatures have become in fantasy generally, it can be a little weird throughout the story having these fish people be these horrible, scary things when we're kind of being desensitized to these sorts of horror things. I think it still totally works.
I think it's more scary because it's a normal person who's turning into a fish.
Yes.
I think it's the
unnaturalness of it.
The unnaturalness and the loss of identity and the unnatural change.
Yeah. And there's
an evolution that you don't know where it's going.
And we and about the theory that these people are just like foreign people, and that's why they look different. The author at this point comments on the fact that he doesn't seem to be that way. He seems to be some kind of, if he is mixed with some unknown human race, it's an unknown one that he can't trace to anything that he knows about. So we're already kind of crossing off that as one of the possible causes.
Yes, he says he looks more like he's got some genetic disease or horrible deformity.
Yes. So he travels on the bus to Innsmouth, and when he arrives there, he's struck by an overwhelming feeling that everything's run down and awful. And then this town used to be grand and impressive and beautiful and well built, and now everything's falling to pieces, and there aren't that many people wandering about, and no old people either. It's all just a few sprinklings of ill-mannered young people.
And lots of the houses are boarded up.
Yeah.
But for someone who is recounting a horrific, traumatic experience that changed his life, he does spend a lot of time describing architecture.
He does.
Yes.
And he also mentions that he constantly mentions like the architecture was interesting.
And it's like
the most traumatic time of my life. But the architecture was kind of weird.
Yes.
Yes. And he sees the former Masonic Hall that's been painted over by the Esoteric Order of Dagon. And it's at this point that he sees a dark figure in one of the houses that has an exact replica of the odd tiara in there, and it's like in a movie or an anime where it like zooms in on the thing and then it zooms in on his eyes and like the time slows and sound goes out. It's like do 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 do. It's like that moment, and he looks in and he can't barely make out this dark figure, and he sees the tiara. And it's
in the doorway of one of the old churches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he sees the very thin sprinkling of repellent looking youngish people loitering about. And he gets out of the bus and he talks around a bit. He's eventually able to find someone who's not native to Innsmouth and who doesn't look or act weird. It's a store manager for the First National chain. And he gives him some insights into what's going on. And he says how weird it is. And we just get more talk about how weird everyone is, how reclusive, and how they swim around a lot.
Oh yeah, and the store manager gives him a map, like a computer game character. You have unlocked map.
Yes. I did feel like a lot of Shadow over Innsmouth felt like the recording of someone's role-playing game.
Yes.
Because he spent a lot of time going around talking to different people and like clicking through on all the dialogue options.
Yeah, it's like completely exhausting every dialogue option and getting a lot of repeated information and wandering around, getting lost on having to find your waypoint marker and having to retrace your steps.
And also his strange insistence on going to Innsmouth, even though it seems like a terrible idea.
I know.
Is like someone who is like, right, this is obviously what I am meant to do for the story to happen. We are doing it.
Yeah, this is where the content is.
Yes.
Off we go, lads.
Yes.
Yeah, except he's by himself.
Yes.
No RPG party with it for this guy.
Yeah.
And he first hears a bit about Zadok Allen, who's one of the most important characters in the story, probably.
Yes.
The old man who's drunk all the time.
Yes, but just to briefly touch on the Masonic Hall and the churches, it is a theme of change or an erosion of identity, that the people are changing physically and also
spiritually.
The ideological connection with other people in the area is being broken and changed.
Yes.
And that they're not represented by the Christian churches and the Freemasons, so they're adopting a totally new and alien religion.
Yes, to match them looking and acting more alien. And so, yep, he continues to wander around, look at architecture, and
the architecture.
Write a lot about architecture.
And he notices that there are no cats or dogs around.
That is a thing that I've also noticed in other Lovecraft books, is whenever anything bad's going on, the cats and the dogs hate the bad people.
This was an important element in the Dunwich Horror, that
Yes.
the dogs didn't like the because one of the characters who's clearly something like totally off about him, dogs start hating him all the time.
And will like try to rip him to pieces on sight.
I wonder whether a lot of Lovecraft stories do seem to be somewhat inspired by real life accounts of demonic activity.
Absolutely.
And I think I remember reading that animals can become agitated when there's lots of traditions about animals being agitated around evil spirits, or bad people.
Yeah.
And also maybe, I don't know, Jan, you might know, but maybe Lovecraft just really liked animals.
I wouldn't be surprised because
he certainly had a cat, didn't he, Ian?
He did, yeah.
Yeah. What's funny about his cat?
I know he had a cat and it was called something funny, but I can never remember what it was called.
That's all right. We'll skip over the cat's name for now. People who know the cat will know what's funny about the cat's name.
And the boy in the grocery store is like, horses. Oh no, that's not. I don't know.
No, it's Zadok who says the thing
anyway.
about horses. So we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah. So I feel a little bit concerned about this boy in the grocery store. We never actually find out what happens to him, but hopefully he holed up nicely in his grocery store and everything was fine.
Doesn't he say he goes home not at nights? I thought
he travels somewhere else.
On the weekends.
On the weekends, I think, if I remember correctly, that's what happens. Yeah.
So hopefully he was all right.
But yeah, so
not the map, man.
Yes.
Yes, this must have been a very well drawn map because the protagonist relies on it very heavily throughout the story.
Yeah. So we get into chapter 3 where he finally spots Zadok Allen and is like, here's my plot element that's going to lead me on to the next part of the quest.
I can see the objective marker over his head.
Yes.
The grocery store boy said that he will tell you the history of the town if you get him drunk.
Which is another video gamey thing of like you have to purchase the thing for him first.
Yeah, and but the other people in the town don't like him talking to outsiders, so you have to do it quietly.
Have to do it secretly.
Yes.
Yes, on the sly.
Yes.
I also like how it's very short, but he also describes how he goes to get alcohol.
Yes.
Which I don't know why I found it so funny, but it was like, I went to this place and I brought alcohol. Moving on.
Yes.
Yeah. I just thought of something. It said that the people in the town drink a lot.
It did, yeah.
They drink like fishes.
Yeah, sure, awesome. Thank you. But yeah, he has 4 hours remaining for a conversation before he has to catch the bus. But no worries about catching the bus. He'll just leave it until the last minute.
Yeah, he's definitely got to catch that bus. He's not
Yeah,
staying overnight. No.
No. And so he gets Zadok by himself and goes to talk to him about it.
And old man Zadok doesn't look like a fish person. He looks like an ordinary guy, except he's super old.
And crazed.
Super mad.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then in very it's written, it's misspelled in the dialogue for Zadok Allen is misspelled in all these ways to give the impression of a strong regional accent and the kind of old crazy drunkenness.
This is the really sad part of the book for me. I found this the most moving part was
for sure.
Zadok Allen's story.
Yeah, so he basically describes in great detail what happened. And basically, Captain Obed and his first mate, Matt Elliott, they were engaging in trade with this island out in the Pacific. And this island had these gold trinkets and seemed to be doing quite well for themselves. And they start to reveal their secrets, that the reason why they're able to do this is because they sacrifice young people to the fishes, to the deep ones, these strange fish people that on this nearby island you can go and sacrifice there, and then the fish people will talk to you. You have to drop a charm into the ocean, and then they'll coordinate with you, and that some of them have started to interbreed with the fish people.
This is something that the fish people have really pushed. They really want this.
Yes.
And we never find out why the fish people are so keen on this.
We don't know whether it's necessary for them to reproduce, whether they just want to like despoil humanity, or
I think it's more that they want to spoil it.
Yeah, because I think maybe now is a good time to bring this up, which is the idea that it's referenced a few times in different places in the story, that the evolutionary idea of we came
from the sea,
and then we grew legs and came onto land, and so from fish we came, to fish we shall return. And so it's like, if we intermingle with the older strand of what we are, then we can return once more.
But it also could be because I think it's mentioned in the Call of Cthulhu that the old ones will only return when man becomes more primal again.
That's interesting.
And so it could be also that they want to try to turn man back primal, so their gods will return.
Yeah, reverse the clock and turn back time. So there's an interesting element to that.
Yeah, the whatever. Do the fish people have a name? Did we ever find out what the name of
I
their
think
species
they're referred
is?
to as the deep ones, aren't they?
The deep ones.
Just the deep ones. The deep ones seem to want to return to being the dominant species.
Above and below land.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they're holding off on their land conquest idea.
Yes, and yeah.
I think it is also mentioned the reason they're holding off. It could be because they are immortal, but they can be killed.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that
they
would be a big incentive not to go to war.
So they don't want to go to war with man because then huge amounts of them will die.
So the idea is they'll just do it slowly by infiltration and subversion
and taking them over genetically.
Yeah.
slowly replacing humanity bit by bit.
Yes. So there's a really strong feeling of being your genetic line being corrupted and overtaken by a
Consumed by a parasitic foreign
influence. And something that was going through this, and I think this will come up a lot when we do The Shape of Water, but I really felt like in a modern story the deep ones would have been the good guys and everyone would have just been very
Absolutely.
mean and being overly superstitious and just people fear what they do not understand.
Yes.
Whereas in Shadow over Innsmouth, there's the people in the surrounding towns to Innsmouth, there's the people on the other island in the Pacific, and they all have a instinctive, extremely hostile response to what's going on.
Yes.
And they are shown as being 100% righteous and correct in everything they're doing.
They react with instinctive hostility. I was like, yes.
Well, a thing that's quite prevalent throughout a lot of Lovecraft stories is the fact that knowledge should not be obtained but should be burnt and hidden away, and the more we know, the more closer we come to destruction, and
Yes, definitely.
the great abyss should not be peered into.
Or else it'll stare back at you and stuff.
Yes, you should just stay on land and slowly cry to yourself as you wail away your years in ignorance and misery.
Yes. There's a... Yeah.
I suppose that's somewhat similar to Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, that the happiest people are the hobbits who just live an ordinary simple life, and it's just about being a good person but not a super intellectual who tries to understand all the dark arts.
Yeah.
Because Saruman studied the arts of the enemy for too long. He done goofed.
Yeah. So it's saying that I suppose it comes down to the knowledge of good and evil and innocence. And that the knowledge of evil is not knowledge worth having.
I think Lovecraft was less knowledge of evil, and I think just knowledge in general, because Lovecraft tapped into the fear of the unknown, and so it's the thing of the unknown should never be known,
because it destroys your mind.
Yes, so even if it could cure cancer, but just because it is unknown, it could be something bad, so you shouldn't go looking for it.
So I suppose it's less things are less unknown and more unknowable, and that once you know them, you can't know them anymore because your brain starts leaking out your ears and you start wailing and throwing yourself off cliffs.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's a distinction there which I think was important to bring up about how there's a difference between knowledge generally and knowledge of good and evil, which I think now is probably a good time to bring this up, where there's the Christian idea where what is all-powerful and all good and what sort of defines reality is God, and he has a divine plan, and the righteous thing to do is to follow that plan and to not rebel against God and to do what he wants us to do. And then there's the Gnostic idea, which is that the good plan of the all-powerful thing that's still true, but the force that's actually materially impacting the world right now, and which seems to have all the power, and which is sort of considered to be the god of the world, is actually evil. It's called the demiurge, and
is tied into physical reality.
yes, and it's physical reality. So basically, it's the idea that the ultimate power in the physical world is evil. So I think Lovecraft was really going with even though what he's believing and talking about is not Gnosticism, it's got that same concept where basically the gods of this world are evil and mustn't be associated with or understood in any way, and there's no divine force that has control of everything and is an ultimate control, which is an appropriate avenue for understanding and greater knowledge. It's better to just live in pathetic, as Jai was saying, better to live in pathetic ignorance than try and understand or grow in any way.
Yeah. Well, not to derail it too much before we finish going through the plot, but it's very interesting to me to compare Lovecraft to Robert E. Howard, as they were friends, and their worlds that they wrote about had lots of similarities, which were,
and even a few direct crossovers,
which were intentional. But Lovecraft is definitely a lot more pessimistic than Robert E. Howard. Robert E. Howard has a lot of, I would say, like humanistic triumphalism in his stories, essentially exemplified in the last story we talked about, The Skull and the Stars, where Solomon Kane encounters a horrific supernatural apparition but is able to conquer it through human courage and will and perseverance and digging down deep and standing bravely up against the horror. And
I think another thing that Lovecraft does is a thing of humanity is not the first and it's not going to be the last.
Yeah, we're just insignificant insects, pathetic, bleh.
Yeah, we're a blip on the map, and most likely whatever is to come, we won't even be around to see it. That the next race will take our place, and they will have to deal with it, whatever comes their way. But we should just keep our noses down and push through until our days either end by destruction by our own hands or by something else.
Whereas Robert E. Howard has a more Warhammer 40,000 style. The gods of this universe are the chaos gods and they're evil. But we've got the Emperor as our god, who's just like a superhuman. Like he's not a natural godlike entity in the reality of the universe. He's just a superhuman that we're worshipping. So against the evil reality of the world, we've got humans. Which is more Robert E. Howard stars, whereas Lovecraft's is more pessimistic and terrible.
Yeah, but it's interesting to think if they could both exist in the same universe.
Just with a change in perspective.
Yes.
And attitude, basically. Yeah.
But I think Lovecraft's, a lot of what made Lovecraft his writing so good, is that he was just such a miserable person.
Yes.
I don't think it's that thing of, I don't think you can put such pessimistic and such misery and such like what is life into a story without feeling it, I suppose. I know that sounds very...
No, I think you're right.
It is definitely feels authentic. It doesn't feel like someone's just sadistically being down in the dumps. It's not like, he's not telling you, you're nothing, everything's hopeless, it's a sincere expression.
Yeah, of just like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? Nothing matters.
Life sucks.
Yeah.
Immigrants everywhere. But anyway, let's continue on with the story before we get too more sidetracked again. So we've got Zadok Allen's horrible story again. He's he's trading with the Pacific Islander people, but then all of a sudden the the pious natives from this other islands catch wind of them mating with the deep ones and wipe them all out. And it's like a fist pump moment, like, yeah, they did it.
I do want to mention something which I just thought was slightly amusing. They strew these like symbols around.
Yes,
on the
I was
ground.
going to mention that. Yeah, it's called nowadays a swastika.
They drove out the evil with a swastika.
Yeah.
I know. I just
The
find
holy
that
symbol
so,
of the swastika. Yes.
I just find that so hilarious that it's just like oh, you know, use swastikas to kill the evil people.
Yes, because this was obviously written in like 1912 or something.
No,
No,
it was
it's later than that.
Okay.
1930s, 1920s.
Right.
Which could
But
be
it's
like a
set
super.
it's set
you
in
could
1912,
become
I
like
think.
super like, you know, theorists and say the Nazis were just trying to keep out the deep ones.
By having the swastikas everywhere, like no fish people here.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I am massively pure. No fish people. Yes, for sure. But this leaves Obed in a state because he has no more of his trinkets to trade with, and so having learnt heaps of these rites, he goes back to Innsmouth and says, "God has abandoned you. He's failed."
And no one listens to him for a while, but then the town falls on hard times and people think, oh, maybe we should...
I think I do actually like that. It's not everyone's going like, well, suppose this guy's saying that we should do it, so may as well we should do it.
It's quite a gradual change over time
Yeah.
for the town. It's definitely shown to be a lot of wholesome resistance to the...
Yeah. And so what happens is that over time, Obed and his people begin to drag people off in the middle of the night to give the appropriate sacrifices. But eventually the town after the civil war, the town all gets back together and has a think about it and goes, wait, he's dragging people off to sacrifice, and that's not on. So they lock up Obed and all his cronies. But then the deep ones are mad that they're not getting their sacrifices anymore, and they swarm out of the sea and like kill half the people of the town.
And this is the most tragic moment in the book for me, where where the old man talks about this happens when he was like 7 years old.
Yeah, and he
his
sees them
father,
coming out.
And his father takes his shotgun and says, "I'm going out to help." It was like, that was the last time I saw my dad. And
it's
it was
like,
so
oh no.
horrifying that I think at this point what they could have done is just run for it. But
Yes.
people are obviously trapped in the town and they're forced to go along with it.
But this is a very Alex Jonesian analysis of evil, which I think is borne out by the story, even if it's not the main point that old HP was trying to get across, which is that when evil tells you just got to go along with us or else something really bad will happen, just exposing it is always the best choice, and it leads to preventing bad things in the future, because our protagonist exposing things in the end seems to have a pretty good result. And if only someone at the time had been able to do that.
Yeah, because they made the townspeople feel like if they went out and tried to raise the alarm, they were just going to take over the surface world. So it made them feel like they had to go along with it to protect everyone else.
Whereas in actuality, when the surprisingly awesome US government immediately solves the problem with violence, no response. So the deep ones will all bluster and we'll get you, but they kind of just back down when you show some grit. So
because as we know, violence is the
one universal language.
Yes.
Force is the universal language, and I speak it fluently. Yes.
Yes, and it was essentially sad throughout this whole narrative because the old man keeps on saying, "I know you don't believe me."
And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. He's so terrible.
I know.
It's like, do it. Well, the guy's mad, so, you know.
And he's like, this all must be an allegory for something.
I know. He's really getting on the reader's nerves at this point with his, this is all superstitious. I'm an intellectual.
His
blockheadedness.
scientific materialism
Yes.
is
Facts don't lie. Get wrecked, libtard.
Yeah. Not for a moment did I believe that the tale had any real substantial foundation.
Yeah, so it's like...
Really?
It's why not?
Really, bro?
It's this whole thing of he's only disregarding it because he's got a preconception about materialism. It's not even materialism, because the fish people aren't necessarily supernatural. They're
No.
just fish people.
But I also think it's not necessarily... The way I took them in was not necessarily that it was... He's not believing because he's like, facts are better than all the evidence I see. But I also see it's like a defense mechanism saying this can't happen. Like, you know,
This couldn't be real.
this couldn't be real.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a name for it, but, you know, just blocking it out because...
Skepticism.
No.
No. If it's true, it's so awful that you couldn't possibly believe it.
Yeah, like mental health defense blocks against realizing horrible truths.
Yes.
Yeah.
But towards the end, and the old man talks about how over time the deep ones weren't happy with the sacrifices, and they began to force marriages on the townspeople,
Yes.
and they made the people take different oaths to Dagon, and
Yeah.
this old man
Took the first two.
took the first two, but nothing would compel him to take the third one.
Yeah.
But the rest of the townspeople in Innsmouth haven't killed him because he's protected by the first two
Yeah.
oaths.
And he talks about how all of the faithful are going to go live with the Mother Hydra and Father Dagon back under the sea from where everyone came from, and then he lapses into the impossible Cthulhu language, which is kind of scary. I never know exactly how you're meant to pronounce all of these nonsense words.
I think that's the point, is because it's not meant to be pronounced by us. It's meant to be pronounced by an eldritch creature.
I know that, but I still feel like there's a way that you're meant to barely, not be able to pronounce
the amount of different things I know Cthulhu's pretty
Some people do say Cthulhu, though.
yeah.
Those people are wrong.
He also mentions no wait, that's later. No, I'm getting confused. Never mind. Okay, continue.
And so towards the end of the dialogue exposition dump, the old man freaks out because he says, "They've seen us. Everything's over."
Right.
Run for your life. Do not stay in this town, whatever you do, pretty much.
Yes.
But before he does that, he briefly mentions that beasts balk at the critters, horses worse than mules, but when they got autos, that was all right. So, the pure breed animal finds these creatures more horrifying than the
Mixed animal.
mixed animal. Interesting little thing there, yeah. And he's talking about how Captain Obed took a second wife,
But no one sees her.
who's obviously a deep one, clearly, and the daughter of that marriage went off and married someone outside of town. And first time reading this, I immediately clued on to what the twist was going to be at the end. I was like,
So, to be clear, people don't turn into fish people because they take the third oath of Dagon.
No.
They are born between a marriage between a fish person and a human being,
yes,
and a human being.
Yes, that's why.
And they come out looking human, and then over time they turn more and more fishy.
But not all of them do.
No, there's
The bloodline has to get more fish people-y for it to be more certain that they'll always do that. And there's a
which I suppose is useful. The fact that some of them will always look human might be a useful characteristic for infiltrating a population.
Yeah.
That you can send out people to marry other people and they won't know.
The gene stealer cults in Warhammer 40,000 are absolutely based off the deep ones and the way they infiltrate societies and turn everyone into hybrids and mutants. So, yeah, it's at this point that he realizes that they're being spotted, and he tells them, "Get out of here!" And our protagonist thinks, "Wow, good thing this is all superstition and nonsense. Otherwise, I'd be in real trouble." Whoopsie. And that's the end of chapter 3.
And he goes back into town, and the bus driver says, "Oh, sorry, the bus is broken."
Yeah, bad luck.
Suppose you have to stay the night.
Yes.
Yes, and he's like, oh, that's a shame. I feel somehow unsettled for some reason. Weird.
And instead of doing anything like trying to steal the bus, trying to just walk out himself, trying to
I think just casually walking out of town without attracting attention would have been the number one thing to do at this point.
He decides to rent a room. And also the fact that they're like, yes, we have a room prepared for you.
Yes, so even in the best case scenario where people just have a weird deformity, this is just a run-of-the-mill cult and there's some kind of smuggling operation going on, he's definitely getting murdered.
Yes.
It's so stupid.
Oh yeah, sorry, but about the smuggling, I'd forgotten that Zadok mentions that the Deep Ones are beginning to bring things in. And have you heard of a Shoggoth? Have you?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So there's a reference to another Cthulhu mythos creature, which is like a giant, army, fleshy, amorphous creature.
I think if I remember, if it's the right thing, I think it's the Shoggoth. Isn't there a thing about it doesn't like light? Or is that something else?
I don't remember. I'm sure it doesn't.
It seems like the fish
know.
people don't like light, or they don't want to be out because all the houses are boarded up, and they said there might be tunnels connecting them.
I can't remember if this is a Shoggoth or not, but there's the story about the church that has something in its bell tower.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
And the local people, another thing of the local people being super awesome and on top of things, make this massive wall of electric lights to keep it in because it hates the light. And then it's like one night all the lights go out, and so all the men come out and stand with lanterns.
Oh, they are
in a ring around the church, just to keep the wall of light up.
That shows that even though Lovecraft was super pessimistic, he had a kind of optimism in like common man.
Yes.
The common decency of, even though he wasn't religious himself, was
no.
But he seemed to have like the common decency of like just good church going people who didn't stand no nonsense.
Yes, absolutely. Which is another thing which marks out the story as being not a modern one, because it is, instead of being portrayed as
the Dursleys are definitely the heroes of this story. They know that something weird is going on,
like
and they're not standing it.
Like the evil, monstrous wizard race, which is trying to take over the world. You know, the Dursleys know what's what. They're on top of that.
The like zero tolerance for weirdness is what will help you survive in a Lovecraftian universe.
And then he actually is disturbed somewhat by something for once. He's like, this is actually kind of bad. There's the bolt's been removed on his door. That's a bit weird, right?
That must just be a coincidence.
My favourite thing about that though is then he just finds another one.
So they took it off. They went to all the trouble of unscrewing his bolt. And
where shall I put it? Leave it in the dresser. Just leave it in the room. He won't be able to put it back on.
And because he has a pocket knife, there's got
like a Swiss Army knife,
a screwdriver on it, so he just screws it back on.
And then it's like, well, I can sleep well tonight. And then he goes like, oh wait, there was that whole thing about horrible noises at night.
And people being murdered. Oh, I feel weirdly disturbed for some reason.
I don't know why, but I just can't sleep.
So he ends up just lying down with all his clothes on, including his shoes.
This is the second Lovecraft story I've read where the main character stays at a very suspicious place, and instead of like going like, let's go to bed and then undressing, he just lies in his clothes waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, because
except last time the other guy had a gun, which I sort of feel like he probably would have been good with.
Yeah.
Although I think discharging a gun would have alerted people to his presence. I think. Yeah.
I mean, there was a small. We don't know how many. It seems like it was a large number. So anyway, around 2 o'clock, there's a shuffling outside his door. This is another
fishy shuffling.
This is another thing that I'm not sure about. Is that why were they trying to be stealthy? Because they were trying to stealth into the room to get him.
I think it's that thing of if you go like. I don't think they were necessarily trying to be stealthy. I think that was more like they were expecting the door to be unlocked.
I think they were trying to be stealthy. I felt like this was just because you're right, because he's got no help. He doesn't seem to have anywhere to run. Why not just swarm in, bash down the door, and do whatever they're going to do to him? Well, I get the feeling like it's their instinct to be stealthy.
And I suppose they didn't know
normal
that he
humans.
was awake, so they were hoping to catch him, open the door, him not wake up, and then them come and kill him.
Yeah,
in his sleep.
it's just easier to be stealthier, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so he hears the weird shuffling outside his door, realizes.
This, another thing that we have to mention, he locked both side doors. There are 2 side doors leading into either other room, and he locked both of them, which is like the smartest move anyone has ever done.
This is where his brain like doubles in size, and he
I know,
suddenly
it's
starts
like-
acting like a sensitive
Yeah.
person.
This whole time his brain's been this tiny that's like faintly pulsing, and suddenly like expands to galaxy size, and he suddenly starts acting like the best horror protagonist ever, and acting super smart, super decisive. It's really a dramatic change.
You start to gain a lot more sympathy for this guy.
Yes.
With all this decisive action that he starts taking after all the sort of blithering around and looking at architecture that he's been doing the whole time and saying, "Oh, this can't be real."
This can't be real. Only like 4 people got killed here, so must be fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that they try the bolt, it's locked, so they shuffle off downstairs.
No. They tried one door, then they tried the other door.
Yes.
And then they shuffle off downstairs.
And
And then
they
he
come
has to like
back.
burst into a different room and slam the door shut as they're trying to burst in.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that they come. This is another thing that makes it feel like it was a RPG video game.
Because he blocks
Because there's this
2 doors.
complicated mini game starts
Of like doors opening and closing in different rooms and blocking different. I didn't understand it actually. I'll be honest. 'Cause there's all these
I
different.
got a pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
So in his first room, he blocks one door going off into one room, another bedroom, and he blocks the door going into the hallway.
Yeah.
And he hears them try, and then he bursts into the other one, see them just opening the door into the hallway, slams the door several times with the guy's hand, and then closes it, bolts it, pushes a shelf in the way, pushes the bed against the door into the way he came.
Right.
Then he's going to open the next door, and he hears them like turning the door, like they're like just about to reach in the thing, and so there's like a moment of hesitation. Does he keep going on his plan to get out the window into the next building, or does he try like just bunker down in here and hope they go away, and then goes, yeah, probably they're not going to leave me alone. So he kicks down the door, runs to the door, slams it closed, bolts it, puts a bookcase in the way, and
He
then
has a
jumps
lot
out
of
the window.
furniture
He
moving
does.
very quickly.
He does. He moves like half a room in like that.
Yeah.
I know, it's like A+, man. Wow, you're doing great. So he escapes into the warehouse.
So all of this furniture moving, door slamming, and jumping around from different rooms is because he needs to get closer to jump into the roof of the warehouse. He needs to get the right angle. So he had to move. He had to move across 2 rooms to get there.
And not only now is he in the last room and he's barricaded himself in there, and then he does the very old adventurous thing of tying a rope with blankets to get out the window.
I thought it was the
curtains.
the curtain railing.
Oh,
I thought
that's
it was
right, it
actually
was
the
the
railing.
curtains.
So it's like a metal.
And they're not speaking English.
The horror! That was the most eldritch thing that's ever happened to him.
Oh no! They're Mexican immigrants, no!
Yeah, my mind is melting.
Ah!
So he throws the metal railing down across the sheer drop and shimmies across, drops into the warehouse, and then starts his moonlit track across town.
Which is one of the coolest parts of this book, I think.
Yeah.
Especially because
He's doing the zombie walk too. You know, the awkward Innsmouth shuffle to avoid detection.
Yeah, when he has to cross open spaces.
That sounds like a really old dance move. And do the Innsmouth shuffle.
Yeah, and this is where I say that this map that he got from the grocery boy must have been top notch, because he relies on it to navigate his escape route out of town, and it's like, well, that route is blocked off, so I'll try route C, and it's very accurate and good.
Yep, and he also sees masses of swarms teeming in the
So the
harbor.
population is obviously much larger than he initially thought.
Yeah, and he realizes that they must have blocked off all of the main roads leaving out, so he thinks, oh no, I'll take the abandoned railway out, because that's like the one place no one would ever think to go. There I go, I'm going there.
Yes.
It does make a bit more sense though when he comes to the bridge. Because Because you'd think the way he describes it, it seems that it's like barely holding itself together.
Because he'd already crossed there, hadn't he? He'd already chanced it once during the daytime. Didn't he cross it even though he said I crossed the bridge even though it said that it had...
I don't remember.
Anyway.
No, I don't think he did.
But he crosses the old railway bridge and doesn't fall to his death and is forcing his way, kind of commando crawling through brambles and things along the railway bridge, and he sees a procession going past.
Yes, he sees the procession of horror
as it crosses the railway intersects with the main road.
And he dramatically passes out.
Yeah, he faints.
because as he sees the full-blooded deep ones croaking and flopping and pattering and slobbering past him.
Yeah, his brain can't take it and he
Blah! I can't handle the horror.
Yes.
Faints.
But I was very surprised that he wasn't captured or didn't stumble on something else. And I must admit, I found the ending of this book slightly anticlimactic. Like, I thought he would see some kind of rite that they were doing, or see a bit more detail of what was going on. It was all just like, oh, that they tried to get me and then I got away.
And then he goes immediately to Arkham and then tells Batman that he needs to sort this right out now.
Yes. Don't worry, Joker. I'll handle it. Yes, I'm gonna get him.
Yeah,
Got to beat up some fishmen.
So he wakes up from where he passed out and struggles and is found like all raving and everything as he stumbles his way to the next town.
And okay, now I think the next relevant thing to do will be to check up on my mother's family. Oh no!
So he
Whoopsie!
He alerts all the authorities.
Yes.
And somehow, even though he's one obviously mentally disturbed guy, convinces them to nuke a town.
And my favorite part about that is, I don't know why, but I just get the thing the thing from, I forgot, I think it's what's that blues movie called?
The Blues Brothers, about them going to get the money for the orphanage.
And right at the end, it's the where all the military show up, in huge force.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
don't know
like
why.
that.
I just see that, the small town, and then just like the military like crawling out of every.
Wouldn't that be a cool movie where you could make a movie about the army men who go in and they're in the 1920s, and it's all about them gunning down Eldrick's horrors and people going mad all over the place, like hold it together, man, and they're just shooting everyone. That would be a cool movie.
You know what it reminds me of a bit? It reminds me a bit of the end of Shaun of the Dead, where there's the kind of underlying assumption, which is kind of explained and addressed in a cool way in World War Z, but there's an underlying assumption of the zombie movie that the army just can't handle it for some reason. And then Shaun of the Dead is like, oh yeah, but the army totally can though. It just does.
Yeah.
It does just handle the zombie problem.
So
it's kind of like the end of the Mist miniseries.
I haven't seen that.
Anyway, it's a Stephen King book, but in the end, in the miniseries, the army just shows up and flamethrowers everything.
Right.
These interdimensional creatures, and then in the end, it's just like, well, the military has flamethrowers, you see, and it burns things. And
is that where the man kills
everyone else, and then is
kills his whole family, is about to kill himself, and then help arrives.
Yes.
Like, whoops.
Yeah.
I know, it's very sad.
But the
Spoiler alert, by the way.
The most exciting, epic part of the story happens entirely off screen, and it was destroyed. Yeah. Oh, that happened.
It is also mentioned, though, interestingly, that not all of them were killed. Some of them were taken to insane asylums, and I assume that's the more human ones.
Yeah.
And Obed. Who's the crazy guy called?
Zadok Allen?
Yeah, is not found, so we assume he's been killed.
Yeah, because he broke the Pact of Dagon by telling the author everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be, if someone ever wanted to write a book or do a movie or something about the the siege and destruction of Innsmouth. That
Yeah.
would be pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of outside the scope of what Lovecraft writes about that. Maybe he should have got Robert E. Howard to write that.
Yeah.
You know? and the person leading the charge with some like muscle bound Ubermensch being like, you know,
Who stares at the eldritch horror in the face and says, "Oh, it'd be like the Predator. It bleeds. We can kill it."
Yeah, and then he like struck the Shoggoth with tiger like panther wolf ferocity and killed it
Yes.
instantly. But anyway, he begins to discover that his great grandmother was the daughter of Obed Marsh, and was definitely half fish, half deep one.
And it causes him a lot of distress. And his uncle, his great uncle, had
Killed himself,
had-
Walter.
Had found out about this while doing research, and had killed himself.
Actually, interestingly enough, he too went on a interesting family thing through New England, and then came back and promptly shot himself. So we
Yeah.
assume he also went to Innsmouth.
Yeah, there's another story which I don't remember the name of. I think it's called The White Ape or something. But again, it's about this person who discovers he's part horrid, eldritch horror, and burns himself alive. But our protagonist starts to get dreams about cyclopean, watery spaces and living forever under the sea.
And
And
starts
many,
to, and
many
starts to
shaggoths.
see his looking at his reflection in the mirror and seeing that he looks more and more fish-like every day.
There's an interesting story that Lovecraft did, which was, I think it's called The Outsider, and it's one of the only stories I think he wrote which was like, then I found out I was the horror, and then he sort of goes on to describe how awesome it is to be a eldritch abomination.
Right. Yeah, he does the I was secretly the horror the whole time. That happens a few times, but one of his cousins has been put in jail for not jail, sorry, insane asylum for being crazy, and he realizes this is clearly because he's
A fish person.
manifesting fishy qualities, and so he ends the story with saying, "I'm going to break him out, and we're going to go live under the sea forever." And we're heading back to Innsmouth, and it's like,
And then it ends in the nonsense.
they were like, Cthulhu.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a downer, creepy ending. But I
For
suppose
sure.
you have to have
That's
something.
most of Lovecraft's.
You had to have
endings,
something to
though.
offset the triumph of having bombed Innsmouth.
Yeah.
I think one of the only ones that really have a true happy ending is Dunwich Horror.
Yeah. Dunwich Horror is like a classic adventure story, happy ending where they kill the monster, and you're like, wait, what?
I know.
Yeah.
You end it and it's like, then they all lived happily ever after. I'm like, there must be another chapter where you find out that they were all secretly the bad guys.
Or they will start to go mad.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, they're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very interesting. And it'll be very interesting, I think, to watch The Shape of Water after this and see how Guillermo del Toro has subverted, changed, and come at this thing from a totally different angle.
Yes.
The moral of The Shadow over Innsmouth. I suppose there's a few morals.
Don't crossbreed.
Yeah, always don't
Keep the blood pure.
Yep. Don't marry strange people from over the sea.
Or under it.
Yep.
Under it.
Always be super suspicious of anyone who's weird or different, especially if they come in with
Yes.
strange, different beliefs.
Yes.
Just be
React.
super hostile.
Yeah, react with immediate, absolute violence.
And
And-
when in doubt, shoot people.
Yes. And also, if you're near the sea and you're worried about old ones, carry a swastika with you.
Yes, it's like, yeah.
Just a little metal one, so
Yeah.
when the Eldritch Horror pops out, you can go ha ha.
Yes.
Like
The power of Nyarlathotep compels you. The power of Nyarlathotep compels you. And you're like waving the swastika. Yes. Good moral.
Yes.
Alright, excuse you.
Yep.
Alright. Bye, everyone.